Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the message on her screen for the third time. The words hadn't changed, but she still couldn't believe them. After 3 years of war, the Galactic Hegemony Council wanted to talk. The communication had arrived through official channels, bearing the seals of 12 different alien species. The language was formal and cold, but the meaning was clear. They wanted humanity at the negotiation table. Ma'am? Lieutenant Rodriguez stood at attention beside her desk. The council is waiting for your response. Chen rubbed her tired eyes. 3 years of fighting had aged her more than the previous 20 years of her military career. Every day brought news of new battles, lost ships, and brave souls who would never see Earth again. Tell them we accept, she said finally. But we send only 5 people. Rodriguez looked surprised. 5? Ma'am, they're sending delegations of 30 or 40 each. 5 is enough, Chen said. She was already making mental notes about who to bring. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes, their best expert on alien biology. Colonel Martinez from Military Intelligence. Commander Thompson from the Engineering Corps. And herself, of course, 2 weeks later. Chen found herself aboard the transport ship Defiant, heading toward Concordia Prime. The neutral station sat at the edge of known space, a massive structure built by long-dead aliens who once tried to unite the galaxy. Nervous? Dr. Reyes asked as they approached the docking bay. Chen watched the alien ships through the viewport. Dozens of them, from 12 different species. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built. The Zephyrian hive ships looked like giant insects made of metal. The Karathi warships were built like flying fortresses, all angles and armor. The ethereal ships seemed to be made of pure light, shifting and changing as she watched. Should I be? Chen replied. The docking bay was enormous. As the humans walked toward the main corridor, aliens of every shape and size watched them pass. Some had too many eyes. Others had no eyes at all. A few floated in the air, defying gravity. Chen had seen aliens before, of course, but never this many different types in one place. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only met a small portion of its inhabitants during the war. The council chamber was even more impressive. It was circular, with seating arranged in tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling. Light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, casting no shadows. The human delegation took their assigned seats near the bottom. Around them, hundreds of alien representatives filled the chamber. The sound was overwhelming at first. Clicks, hums, electronic pulses, and noises that human ears couldn't properly identify. Chairman Vextar of the Zephyrian Collective called for order. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the chamber's light. When he spoke, his voice came from speakers around the room, translated into dozens of languages. We gathered today to end an unfortunate conflict, Vextar began. The human species has shown remarkable determination in defending their territory. However, mathematics cannot be ignored. The time has come for practical solutions. Chen listened as Vextar outlined humanity's situation. 47 worlds against over 3,000. A population of 30 billion against nearly 2 trillion. Industrial capacity that was less than 1% of the combined hegemony output. The numbers are clear, Vextar continued. Continued resistance serves no purpose. We offer generous terms for peace. The terms appeared on screens throughout the chamber. Humanity would keep their home system in 3 colony worlds. All other human settlements would be abandoned. Human ships would be restricted to their assigned territory. The hegemony would oversee all human expansion for the next century. Around the chamber, alien delegates made sounds of approval. Clicks from the Zephyrians, low rumbles from the Karathi, musical tones from the Sylvan Confederacy. Warprime Thaknal of the Karathi Empire stood to address the humans directly. His scales were dark red and scars covered his armored hide. Your species fights well, he said. But you fight uselessly. Accept these terms and your children will live. Chen looked at her tablet, reviewing the terms one more time. She thought about Earth, about the colonies, about all the humans who had died in this war. She thought about the families waiting for news from the front lines. Dr. Reyes leaned over and whispered, "They really think we have no choice, don't we?" Colonel Martinez asked quietly. Chen closed her tablet. The sound echoed through the chamber, somehow louder than it should have been. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the human delegation. "We appreciate the offer," Chen said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "But we'll have to decline." Silence fell over the chamber. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Vex-Tar's compound eyes seemed to focus on Chen with difficulty. Perhaps there was a translation error. You said, decline? That's correct, Dr. Reyes said, standing up beside Chen. We decline your terms. War Prime Thacnal's scales shifted to orange, a color that Chen's intelligence briefings had identified as confusion among the Karathi. Impossible. You cannot decline. Your species controls barely 1% of hegemony space. This is not negotiation. This is mercy. You're right, Chen said calmly. This isn't negotiation. A real negotiation requires both sides to have something to gain from compromise. What you're offering us is surrender terms. Luxandra of the ethereal communion flickered with brighter light. Her translated voice carried what sounded like indignation. Surrender? We offer survival, your worlds. Protection under hegemony law. Chen stood up slowly. Around the chamber, she could see alien delegates leaning forward, trying to understand what they were hearing. Our worlds, Chen repeated, as if tasting something bitter, protected by the same laws that classified us as aggressive primitives when we first made contact. The same protection that allowed the Karathi to destroy New Geneva because we expanded too quickly. The chamber filled with nervous sounds from the smaller species. Chen could see that some of the alien representatives were starting to look uncomfortable. You've spent 3 years trying to contain us, Chen continued, and we've spent 3 years learning exactly what you're capable of. It's been educational for both sides. Colonel Martinez smiled grimly as he added, The education continues tomorrow. Chen gathered her things and started toward the exit. Dr. Reyes, Colonel Martinez, Commander Thompson, and the 5th human delegate followed her. Wait, Vex-Tar called after them. You cannot simply leave. We must reach an agreement. Chen paused at the chamber entrance and looked back at the hundreds of alien representatives. No, she said simply. We really don't. As the human delegation walked through the corridors of Concordia Prime, their footsteps echoed with a finality that seemed to disturb the aliens they passed. Through the station's massive viewing windows, the assembled alien fleets could see the 5 small human ships, powering up their engines. The aliens watched in growing confusion as the human vessels engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into hyperspace. They didn't look back. They didn't send final transmissions. They simply left. In the council chamber, hundreds of alien delegates sat in stunned silence trying to process what had just happened. The humans had walked away from peace talks. They had rejected terms that would guarantee their survival. War Prime Thacnal was the first to speak. What do we do now? Chairman Vex-Tar stared at the empty seats where the humans had been sitting. For the first time in his long life, he didn't have an answer. The emergency session began 2 hours after the humans left Concordia Prime. Representatives from all 12 species gathered in a smaller chamber, their earlier confidence replaced by confusion and growing concern. Chairman Vex-Tar paced in front of the assembled delegates, his forearms moving in agitated gestures. Explain to me how this happened, he demanded. How did 5 humans walk away from negotiations that should have ended this war? War Prime Thacnal's scales had shifted from orange confusion to deep red anger. They are fools. Suicidal fools. Do they not understand mathematics? Do they not see that continued resistance is pointless? Perhaps they do understand, said Dr. Kethmore of the Sylvan Confederacy. The plant-like being's voice was soft and thoughtful. Perhaps that is precisely the problem. Luxandra flickered with nervous energy. Explain your meaning. Dr. Kethmore's leaves rustled as he spoke. Consider their behavior. They listened to our terms without argument. They reviewed our data without question. They acknowledged our superior numbers, yet they declined our offer with complete calm. Calm? Sektar of the Karathi Intelligence Division leaned forward. You call that calm? They insulted our laws. They refused our mercy. They showed complete disrespect for our authority. Exactly, Dr. Kethmore said. They showed no fear, no desperation, no anger. They simply are left. The chamber fell quiet as the implications sank in. Species after species had joined the hegemony over the centuries, usually after brief conflicts that ended with exactly this type of negotiation. The pattern was always the same. Show overwhelming force. Offer reasonable terms. Accept surrender. Integrate the new species into the existing order. But humans had broken the pattern. Admiral Zixoth of the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacle. Perhaps we should examine their recent military actions. There may be clues in their battle tactics. For the next several hours, the alien leaders reviewed 3 years of combat data. What they found disturbed them more than they wanted to admit. "Look at this pattern," Sektar said, projecting battle reports onto the chamber's main screen. Early in the war, human ships would retreat when facing superior numbers. Standard tactical doctrine, but in the past 18 months their behavior has changed. The reports showed a disturbing trend. Human ships no longer ran from losing battles. Instead, they fought until their vessels were destroyed. But somehow most of their crew survived. Advanced escape pods, rescue operations, and survival techniques that seemed impossible given their technology level. They're not trying to preserve their fleet, War Prime Thaknol realized. They're preserving their personnel. Why? Vextar asked. Experienced crews are valuable, but not more valuable than ships. The answer came from an unexpected source. Commander Riksdal, a minor intelligence officer from the Hegemony's outer territories, had been quietly reviewing captured human communications. "Permission to speak?" Riksdal asked nervously. Vextar gestured for him to continue. "We've intercepted fragments of human military communications," Riksdal said. "Their commanders frequently use phrases like learning experience and tactical intelligence gathering when referring to their defeats." Luxandra's energy field pulsed with interest. "They treat defeats as education." "More than that," Riksdal continued. "According to our analysis, human crews are debriefed extensively after every engagement. They catalog our weapons, our ship designs, our tactical approaches. Every battle, win or lose, generates detailed reports that are distributed throughout their fleet." Dr. Kethmore's leaves began to change color, a sign of deep concern among his species. "They're not fighting a war of conquest. They're fighting a war of understanding." The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. For 3 years, the Hegemony had been fighting what they thought was a conventional territorial conflict. But from the human perspective, every battle had been a research opportunity. Every engagement had been a chance to study their enemies. Admiral Zixoth made a disturbing connection. The merchant vessels. The human trader ships we've been seeing throughout Hegemony space. They claim to be conducting business, seeking trade agreements. What about them? Vextar asked. "They weren't merchants," Zixoth said grimly. "They were scouts. Intelligence gatherers, mobile research stations." The chamber erupted in alarmed sounds from dozens of species. The humans had been inside Hegemony territory for years, apparently studying every world, every species, every technology they could access. Sektar was already accessing his intelligence databases. "Computer, locate all documented human civilian vessel movements in Hegemony space over the past 5 years." The results were staggering. Thousands of contacts. Human ships had visited nearly every major Hegemony world, often multiple times. They had requested tours of cultural sites, industrial facilities, and even military installations. They had claimed to be scholars, traders, tourists, and diplomats. "How many of our worlds have they seen?" War Prime Thaknol asked. "All of them," Sektar replied grimly. "They've been to all of them." The silence that followed was broken by a new voice. Captain Morden of the Hegemony's Deep Space Patrol had just arrived from the Outer Rim with urgent news. "Forgive my interruption," Morden said, "but I bring word from the front lines. Human activity has increased dramatically in the past 6 months. New ship designs, new weapons, new tactics we've never seen before." Vextar felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What kind of new tactics?" "They seem to know exactly how to counter each species' specific abilities," Morden replied. "Against Zephyrian hive ships, they use sound weapons that disrupt collective consciousness. Against Karathi heavy armor, they deploy energy weapons that adapt in real time. Against ethereal energy forms, they use containment fields that we didn't know they possessed." Dr. Kethmore's voice was barely audible. "They know our weaknesses, all of them," Morden confirmed. "It's as if they've been studying us for years, learning everything about how we fight, how we think, how we live." The truth was undeniable now. While the Hegemony had been fighting a war of conquest, humanity had been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. They had spent 3 years learning everything they could about their enemies, and now they were done learning. Vextar stared at the tactical displays showing human fleet movements. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced before when dealing with a primitive species. Fear. "Sir?" one of his aides asked. "What are your orders?" Vextar continued staring at the displays. Human ships were moving throughout their territory, no longer in small scouting groups but in large, organized fleets. They were moving with purpose, with confidence, with the precision of a species that knew exactly what it was doing. "Send word to all Hegemony worlds," Vextar said finally. "Maximum alert status. Prepare all defensive systems." "Sir," the aide asked hesitantly. "Should we attempt to contact the humans again? Perhaps offer better terms?" Vextar thought about Admiral Chen's calm expression as she declined their offer. He thought about the way the humans had simply walked away without anger, without fear, without any apparent concern for the consequences. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think they're interested in terms anymore." Through the chamber's viewing windows, the alien delegates could see their own fleets beginning to disperse, heading back to defend their home worlds. The war they thought they were winning had somehow become something else entirely, and they were no longer sure who was really in control. 3 months after the failed negotiations, the Hegemony's comfortable certainty began to crack like ice under pressure. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, each one more disturbing than the last. The Zephyrian Queen Mind processed information through billions of connected drones simultaneously. In her vast hive ship at the center of collective space, she analyzed battle data with mathematical precision that had never failed her. Before probability of human victory. "Calculate," she commanded her collective consciousness. The answer came instantly from millions of minds working as one. 0.003%. Human industrial capacity remains at 0.4% of Hegemony total. Fleet strength unchanged at 0.9%. Population density insufficient for sustained warfare. But even as the numbers flowed through the Queen Mind's consciousness, doubt crept in like poison. The mathematics were correct, but something was wrong with the reality they described. "New data point," she announced to her collective. "Human ship construction rate has increased 400% since negotiations ended." The hive mind processed this information with growing confusion. "Impossible. No species can expand industrial capacity so rapidly. Requires decades of infrastructure development. Yet it occurs," the Queen Mind replied. "Query. Explain apparent contradiction." Silence from billions of minds. For the first time in centuries, the Zephyrian collective had no answer. Meanwhile, in the war rooms of the Karathi Empire, similar discussions were taking place. War Prime Thaknol stood before a holographic display showing the latest intelligence reports from the front lines. "Intelligence Chief Sektar," he growled. "Explain these reports of human mining operations." Sektar's scales shifted to pale yellow, the color of uncertainty among his people. "War Prime, our scouts report that humans have strip mined 17 entire asteroid belts in the past 3 months. Not selective mining. Complete extraction. They're turning entire systems into raw materials. For what purpose? Unknown, sir. But their industrial output has increased beyond all projections. They're building ships faster than we can destroy them." Thaknol studied the tactical displays with growing unease. Red dots marked human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. 6 months ago, there had been perhaps 50 significant human vessels. Now there were over 300 and more appeared every day. "These new ships," Thaknol said, "are they the same designs we've been fighting?" "No, sir," Sektar replied grimly. "Every new class incorporates modifications specifically designed to counter our tactics. It's as if they know exactly how we fight." They do know, Thaknol realized. 3 years of combat. 3 years of studying every move we make. The implications sent cold fear through his warrior's heart. The Karathi prided themselves on adaptive tactics, on learning from battle and improving their strategies. But humans seem to be doing the same thing, only faster and more efficiently. In the crystalline chambers of the ethereal communion, Luxandra shared her growing concerns with her fellow energy beings. Unlike species with physical forms, the ethereals communicated through direct energy transfer, sharing thoughts and emotions without the barrier of language. What she shared with them was pure fear. "The human vessels now carry containment fields," she pulsed to her companions. "Fields specifically designed to trap and dissipate energy-based life forms. They shouldn't know such technology exists. Perhaps they developed it independently," suggested another ethereal. "Impossible," Luxandra replied, sharing her analysis. "These fields utilize principles that took our species thousands of years to understand. The humans learned them in months." The ethereal communion fell silent, their combined light dimming as they processed this information. They were beings of pure energy, virtually indestructible by conventional weapons. The fact that humans had developed specific countermeasures against them implied a level of understanding that should have been impossible. But the most disturbing reports came from the outer rim worlds, where human activity had increased dramatically. Captain Morden's patrol ship had been tracking human movements for weeks, and what he discovered changed everything. "Command," he transmitted to Hegemony headquarters. "I need to speak directly with the Council. Emergency priority." Within hours, Morden found himself addressing the same alien leaders who had watched the humans walk away from peace talks 3 months earlier. His report shattered their remaining illusions about the nature of their enemy. "Honorable delegates," Morden began. "Humans are not fighting the same war we are." Bextar leaned forward in his chair. "Explain." "Every human engagement follows the same pattern," Morden said, projecting his data onto the chamber's displays. "They attack, they study our response, they retreat. Win or lose, they gather intelligence. But now I understand what they're doing with that intelligence." The displays showed detailed schematics of human ship designs from the beginning of the war compared to current models. The evolution was striking. Early human vessels were crude, functional, but clearly inferior to hegemony technology. But each new generation incorporated improvements that seemed to target specific alien capabilities. "They're not trying to outfight us," Morden continued. "They're trying to outthink us. Every battle is a research project. Every loss teaches them something new." Dr. Kethmore of the Sylvan Confederacy raised a thin branch. "Are you suggesting they planned this? That 3 years of warfare was intentional?" "I'm suggesting something worse," Morden replied. "I think they're almost finished." The chamber erupted in alarmed sounds from dozens of species. Finished with what? What were the humans planning? Morden answered their unspoken questions with his next revelation. "According to our analysis, human intelligence gathering has focused on 3 primary areas: military capabilities, industrial processes, and social structures. They know how we fight, how we build, and how we think, but why?" Luxandra flickered with confusion. "What use is such knowledge?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Commander Riksdahl, the minor intelligence officer who had first identified the pattern in human communications, had been analyzing captured human transmissions for months. "Permission to address the Council?" he asked. Bextar nodded impatiently. "I've been studying human language patterns, trying to understand their strategic thinking," Riksdahl said. "Human military communications frequently reference something called the curriculum. They treat this war as an educational experience with specific learning objectives." "Learning objectives?" War Prime Thacnell's scales turned deep red. "They're treating us like teachers?" "Worse," Riksdahl replied. "They're treating us like textbooks, sources of information to be studied, analyzed, and understood completely." The silence that followed was filled with the terrible sound of understanding. The humans hadn't been fighting for territory or resources. They had been fighting for knowledge, and if they were nearly finished learning, what came next? Sektar provided the answer they all feared. "Sir, I'm receiving reports of massive human fleet movements. Ships are massing in over 40 systems simultaneously." Bextar felt his compound eyes focusing involuntarily, a stress response he hadn't experienced in decades. "How many ships?" "Conservative estimate?" "Over 2,000 vessels, sir." "But these aren't the ships we've been fighting. These are new designs, bigger, more advanced, built specifically to counter every tactical advantage we possess." The Queen Mind's voice echoed through the chamber via her diplomatic drone. "Query: when did these fleets reach their targets?" Sektar checked his displays one more time, hoping the numbers would change. "They didn't. Tomorrow," he said quietly. "They reach their targets tomorrow." The council chamber fell silent except for the sound of alien breathing, mechanical whirring, and energy fluctuations. Every species represented in that room suddenly understood that they had made a terrible mistake. They had thought they were fighting primitives who would eventually see reason. Instead, they had been educating the most dangerous students in the galaxy, and class was about to end. Bextar stared at the tactical displays showing human fleet positions. Red dots marked the locations of human task forces throughout hegemony space. Each dot represented hundreds of ships, thousands of crew members, and 3 years of accumulated knowledge about how to defeat every species in the galaxy. "Send word to all hegemony fleets," he said finally. "Emergency deployment." Prepare for simultaneous attacks on all major systems. As the alien delegates began issuing orders to their respective fleets, they shared a common realization. The war they thought they had been winning was about to begin, and they were no longer certain they would survive it. Operation Prometheus began at exactly 600 hours Galactic Standard Time, across 47 different star systems simultaneously. It was the largest coordinated military action in recorded galactic history, and it changed everything. The Zephyrian Queen Mind was processing routine administrative data when her consciousness suddenly exploded with alarm signals from 1,000 different sources. Through the compound eyes of millions of drones, she watched human fleets materialize around every major collective world at the same instant. Impossible. She pulsed through her hive network. No species possesses such coordination capabilities. But as her drones fed her tactical information, the impossible became horrifyingly real. The human ships weren't using conventional faster-than-light travel. They were using some form of stealth, technology that had allowed them to position entire fleets without detection. Fleet disposition analysis. She commanded her collective consciousness. The answer came back in nanoseconds. Human vessels optimized for anti-collective warfare. Sonic disruptors detected. Harmonic resonance weapons confirmed. Communications jamming equipment present. The Queen Mind felt something she had never experienced in her 1,000-year existence. Individual fear cutting through the collective consciousness like a blade. The humans knew. They knew exactly how the collective operated, how their shared consciousness worked, and precisely how to disrupt it. The sonic weapons weren't just noisemakers. They were tuned to the exact frequencies that caused neural interference in Zephyrian brains. How? She broadcast to her billions of connected minds. How do they know our vulnerabilities? The answer came from her tactical drones observing the human attack. The ships moved with precision that suggested complete knowledge of collective defensive systems. They avoided sensor arrays with surgical accuracy. They struck communication nodes with perfect timing. They coordinated their attacks to maximize disruption of the hive mind network. For the first time in collective history, the Queen Mind found herself cut off from large portions of her own consciousness. Entire sectors of her empire fell silent as human sonic weapons severed the neural links that connected her people. Across the galaxy, similar scenes of precision devastation unfolded on every major hegemony world. War Prime Thaknol was reviewing morning battle reports when alarms began screaming throughout his command ship. Through the viewports of his bridge, he watched human vessels emerge from what appeared to be empty space, their hulls shimmering with some form of optical camouflage. "How many ships?" he roared at his tactical officer. 200 vessels, sir. Wait, 300? The count keeps increasing. Thaknol's scales shifted through every color in the Karathi emotional spectrum as he realized what he was seeing. The human ships weren't just appearing randomly. They were emerging from concealment at optimal attack positions, having somehow infiltrated his entire defensive perimeter without detection. "Target the lead vessels," he commanded. "Full power to forward batteries." But as his weapons locked onto the human ships, something unprecedented happened. The moment his targeting systems activated, the human vessels began broadcasting detailed information about his ship's defensive capabilities. "Sir," his communications officer reported with obvious confusion, "the humans are transmitting our shield frequencies, armor specifications, and weapons configurations on all channels." Thaknol felt his warrior's pride crumble as he understood the implication. The humans weren't just attacking his fleet. They were demonstrating that they knew everything about Karathi military technology. Every classified specification, every tactical doctrine, every weakness his people thought was secret. The human weapons weren't standard energy beams or kinetic projectiles. They were plasma weapons that shifted frequency in real time, adapting to penetrate Karathi adaptive armor with each shot. It was as if the humans had studied his defenses for years and designed perfect counters for every system. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "our adaptive armor is useless. Their weapons adjust faster than our defenses can respond." Thaknol watched in growing horror as his heavy cruisers, the pride of the Karathi fleet, were systematically dismantled by human weapons designed specifically to counter their strengths. But even worse than the military defeat was the psychological impact of realizing that his enemy, understood his people better than he understood them himself. In the energy fields surrounding the ethereal homeworlds, Luxandra experienced terror in its purest form, as human ships equipped with exotic matter containment systems began systematically capturing her people. The containment fields were perfect. Not approximately correct, not mostly effective, but absolutely perfect for trapping energy-based life forms. The humans hadn't just learned about ethereal biology. They had mastered it completely. How long have they been studying us? She pulsed desperately to her fellow ethereals as the containment fields began to compress their consciousness. The answer came from intercepted human communications that her people managed to decode. The human fleet commander was issuing orders with clinical precision. Containment fields operating at optimal efficiency. Ethereal consciousness patterns are consistent with theoretical models developed during the 3-year observation period. 3 years. The humans had been studying ethereal energy patterns for 3 years, developing containment technology while pretending to fight a conventional war. But the most disturbing revelation came from Dr. Kethmore's homeworld, where human ground forces were demonstrating knowledge of sylvan biology that should have been impossible for any non-plant species to possess. The human soldiers moved through the crystal forests of the sylvan world with perfect efficiency, avoiding toxic spores that had taken the sylvan species millennia to identify. They harvested specific minerals that were essential to sylvan reproduction, minerals whose importance was known only to the Confederacy's highest biological specialists. They know our life cycle, Dr. Kethmore transmitted to the Hegemony Council through his damaged communication array. They understand our biology better than some of our own people. The scope of human intelligence gathering became clear as reports flooded in from every species in the Hegemony. The attacks weren't random or opportunistic. They were surgical strikes against specific vulnerabilities that each species had considered secret. Against the Aquatic Federation, humans used sonic weapons tuned to disrupt the sonar communication that connected their underwater cities. Against the crystalline hierarchy, they deployed harmonic resonators that shattered the crystal matrix structures that formed their bodies. Against the gaseous collective, they used electromagnetic fields that disrupted the plasma coherence that maintained their consciousness. Every attack was perfect. Every weapon was precisely calibrated. Every tactical decision demonstrated complete understanding of alien physiology, technology, and psychology. In the Hegemony Council chambers, Chairman Vextar watched tactical displays that showed the systematic dismantling of galactic civilization. Red indicators marked human victories across hundreds of worlds. Blue indicators showed Hegemony forces in retreat or completely destroyed. Status report, he demanded, though he already feared the answer. Sektar's voice was barely audible. 73 major installations destroyed or captured. 312 worlds under human control. Fleet losses. He paused, checking his figures. Fleet losses exceed 60% across all species. In one day, Vextar's compound eyes focused and refocused, trying to process the magnitude of the disaster. In 8 hours, Sektar corrected. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of incoming damage reports. Every major Hegemony world was either under attack or already fallen. The combined might of 12 species, accumulated over centuries of galactic dominance, had been shattered in a single coordinated assault. But the final horror came when Admiral Chen's image appeared on every communication screen throughout Hegemony space. Her expression was calm, professional, and utterly without mercy. To the former leaders of the Galactic Hegemony, she began, 3 months ago you offered us 47 worlds in exchange for surrender. We declined your generous offer. Her image paused as tactical displays showed human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. The red dots now covered over 400 star systems. Today we're making a counter-offer, Chen continued. We'll keep the 47 worlds we already controlled, plus the 312 we've liberated from your control in the past 8 hours. In addition, we're claiming salvage rights to your former fleet assets and colonial infrastructure. Vextar felt something break inside his mind as he realized the scope of the reversal. In 8 hours, humanity had gone from controlling less than 1% of galactic space to commanding over 30%. This is not negotiation, Chen concluded, echoing the words Thaknul had used 3 months earlier. This is us declining your authority to govern this galaxy. The transmission ended. leaving the alien leadership staring at tactical displays that showed the complete collapse of their civilization. The hegemony that had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years had been dismantled in a single day by a species they had considered primitive. War Prime Thaknul, speaking from his damaged command ship, voiced what every alien leader was thinking. How is this possible? The answer came from the intercepted human. 1 year after Operation Prometheus, the galaxy had been completely transformed. The Galactic Hegemony Council chamber on Concordia Prime, once the center of galactic power, now served as a museum of fallen civilizations. The new rulers of the galaxy held their meetings on New Terra, humanity's first major colonial world beyond Earth. The planet had been transformed into a gleaming capital, its cities rising from carefully planned landscapes that combined human architecture with the best elements of alien design. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes stood before a holographic display in the Human Colonial Senate building, addressing representatives from the former hegemony species via long-range communication. Her manner was professional, almost clinical, as she delivered what amounted to a lecture on the fundamental changes that had reshaped galactic civilization. The transition period is now complete, she announced to the assembled alien representatives. All major systems have been integrated into the new administrative structure. Colonial governments have been established on 890 worlds. 890 worlds. The number hung in the air like a weight. 12 months earlier, humanity had controlled 47 systems. The mathematics of their expansion defied everything the former hegemony species thought they knew about galactic politics. War Prime Thaknul, now representing what remained of the greatly diminished Karathi Empire, raised a clawed hand for permission to speak. His scales had faded to a dull gray, the color of defeat among his people. How? He asked, his voice carrying the exhaustion of a warrior who had finally understood he had never been fighting the real war. How did you expand so quickly? Dr. Reyes smiled with what might have been sympathy. You're still thinking in terms of conquest, War Prime. We didn't conquer 800 worlds. We liberated them. The distinction wasn't lost on the alien representatives. Human expansion hadn't followed traditional patterns of invasion and occupation. Instead, human fleets had arrived at hegemony worlds with detailed knowledge of local politics, economics, and social structures. They offered liberation from hegemony control, better trade agreements, and protection from the chaos that had followed the collapse of the old order. Most worlds had joined the Human Colonial Federation willingly. Chairman Vextar, speaking through a communication drone from the remnants of the Zephyrian collective, pressed for more specific answers. Your expansion required detailed knowledge of every world, every species, every political situation. Such intelligence gathering would take decades. It did take decades, Admiral Chen replied, joining the conference from her flagship in Earth orbit. We've been preparing for this expansion for much longer than you realize. The implications of her statement sent ripples of unease through the assembled alien representatives. How long had humanity been planning this? How far back did their intelligence operations extend? The answer came from an unexpected source. Commander Thompson, the human engineer who had been part of the original negotiation team, activated a series of displays showing the timeline of human space exploration. First human contact with alien civilizations occurred 43 years ago, Thompson explained. From that moment, every human exploration mission, every trade expedition, every diplomatic contact was also a reconnaissance operation. The displays showed the scope of human intelligence gathering over 4 decades. What the aliens had perceived as normal cultural exchange and trade relations had actually been systematic data collection on an unprecedented scale. Every human who visited your worlds was trained in observation techniques, Thompson continued. Anthropologists studying your cultures, engineers analyzing your technology, economists mapping your trade networks, sociologists understanding your political systems. Luxandra's energy form flickered with what human observers had learned to recognize as deep disturbance. You studied us for 40 years? We studied everything, Dr. Reyes confirmed. Your languages, your biology, your technology, your social structures, your military capabilities, your political weaknesses, your economic dependencies. We mapped every aspect of galactic civilization. The scope of the operation was staggering. Thousands of humans had participated in the intelligence gathering, most without even knowing they were part of a larger plan. Scientists, traders, diplomats, tourists, and explorers had all contributed pieces to a puzzle that human strategic planners had been assembling for decades. But why? Dr. Kethmore asked from his recovering homeworld. Why spend so much time and effort studying us? Admiral Chen's expression became serious. Because we learned something important during our first contact with galactic civilization. We learned that we were alone. The alien representatives exchanged confused looks. Alone? The galaxy contained billions of intelligent beings across thousands of worlds. Not physically alone, Chen clarified. Philosophically alone. Every species we met had the same basic approach to expansion and conflict. Establish dominance through superior force. Maintain control through technological advantage. Preserve stability through hierarchical structures. She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. Humans think differently. We don't expand through conquest. We expand through understanding. We don't maintain control through force. We maintain stability through cooperation, and we don't preserve our interests through dominance. We preserve them through adaptation. The fundamental difference in thinking had shaped everything that followed. While the Hegemony species saw the galaxy as a zero-sum competition for resources and territory, humans saw it as an educational opportunity. The war was never about winning or losing, Dr. Reyes explained. It was about learning everything we needed to know to build a better galactic civilization. War Prime Thacnol's scales shifted to deep blue, a color that indicated philosophical confusion among the Karathi. Better for whom? Better for everyone, Chen replied simply. The proof of her statement lay in the data that human administrators had been sharing with the former Hegemony species. Trade had increased by 400% since human expansion began. Technological development had accelerated dramatically as human researchers shared discoveries freely between species. Conflicts between alien civilizations had virtually disappeared under human mediation. You see, Dr. Reyes continued, the hegemony was built on the idea that different species couldn't coexist as equals. Someone had to be in charge. Someone had to make the decisions. Someone had to maintain order through force. But humans had a different idea. We believed that different species could complement each other. That diversity made civilization stronger, not weaker. We just needed to understand each other completely. The irony wasn't lost on any of the alien representatives. The species they had considered primitive had built a more advanced civilization than any of them had achieved in millennia of galactic dominance. Sektar, speaking from a Karathi intelligence facility, raised the question that haunted every former hegemony species. What happens to us now? What is our place in this new order? Admiral Chen's answer surprised them. That depends entirely on what you want your place to be. The Human Colonial Federation isn't an empire. It's a partnership. Any species that wants to contribute to galactic civilization is welcome to do so. As equals, Vexter asked, his compound eyes focusing skeptically. As partners, Chen corrected. Humans are good at understanding and organizing, but we're not the best at everything. Zephyrian collective processing power is still superior to our computers. Karathi engineering is more robust than our manufacturing. Ethereal energy manipulation exceeds our capabilities. Sylvan biological knowledge surpasses our life sciences. The offer was genuine. The Human Colonial Federation wanted to incorporate the best aspects of every civilization, not replace them with human alternatives. But there was a catch, and Dr. Reyes made it clear. Partnership requires trust, she said, and trust requires transparency. No secret weapons, no hidden agendas, no attempts to recreate the old power structures. The former hegemony species faced a choice that would define their future. They could join the new galactic order as junior partners, contributing their expertise while accepting human leadership. Or they could remain isolated in their diminished territories, gradually falling further behind as the rest of the galaxy moved forward. Most chose partnership. The benefits were too obvious to ignore. As the conference ended, the alien representatives signed off one by one, returning to their worlds to begin the complex process of adapting to the new reality. The galaxy they had known for 1,000 years was gone, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history. But the most profound change wasn't political or military. It was philosophical. For the first time in galactic civilization, a species had achieved dominance not through superior force, but through superior understanding. Admiral Chen remained on the communication channel after the other participants had disconnected. She was reviewing reports from the Outer Rim, where human exploration fleets were making contact with species beyond the former Hegemony's borders. "Admiral," her aide reported, "long-range scouts have established communication with the Andromeda Trade Confederation. They're requesting formal diplomatic contact."